All right, guys, so back in 1992, Congress passed a law requiring the government to release any and all documents that have to do with the JFK assassination and Saagar. For some reason, president after president continues to push off the deadlines
exemptions
of some of these key disclosures. Trump did it back in 2017, and now President Biden, with the deadline approaching, also actually used the coronavirus pandemic as an excuse to further delay release of these vital records. So here was his quote, and we have the New York Post tear sheet about this. Biden delays release of JFK assassination records, blaming COVID-19 pandemic. Okay. He said, temporary continued postponement is necessary to protect against identifiable harm to the military, defense, intelligence operations, law enforcement, or the conduct of foreign relations that is of such gravity that it outweighs the public interest in immediate disclosure. They're now saying the most sensitive information will be released in December 2022, and material that has already been deemed appropriate for release to the public will be dumped on December 15th of this year. So once again, and most of these are CIA records, of course, once again, the release of these records is being kicked into the future, and we'll see if they come up with more excuses to further delay this release, which was, again, ordered by law in 1992.
I love that they blame COVID. They're like, yes, I'm like, yeah, was it COVID back in 2017? Come on, man.
Yeah, I mean,
Come on, man.
Years now to get on top of this. Just to give you a sense of some of what would be in this release, there's all kinds of details of a CIA plot to kill Castro. There's another memo about a 1963 Pentagon plan for an engineered provocation that could be blamed on Castro as a pretext for going to war, effectively. There's a lot of history on the CIA's Miami office. And then there are things specifically related to the plot. Some of the, sketchy associates of Oswald, his ties to a CIA-backed exile group, potential indications that one of the key witnesses actually lied to Congress about Oswald's ties to that group. So there's a lot here that could be of interest, whether with regards to the JFK assassination plot or just all of the shady crap that the CIA was doing back then and, of course, continues to do today. But we're not going to find out about it.
Well, I was going to say, you know more about it than me. Like, in terms of the documents, are we really going to learn anything around the
it's
activities?
Impossible to say. Because, so the way the law is set up, there are some exemptions here. Basically they can say, oh, well, this is against our national security, is effectively, like, it's going to reveal secrets that'll harm our national security. I mean, first of all, this is like
50 years ago.
60 years ago, guys. I mean, are we still, like, so it's a lame excuse. But even with that big loophole, they're supposed to, by the law, justify each and every exemption. So you can't just blanket say, oh, we can't release this whole memo because it'll harm our national security. You're supposed to, line by line, effectively justify each thing that you think the exemption applies to and give a reason. They say that the legislature, there's actually a bunch of legal experts and academics who are saying, you're breaking the law right now. This isn't just something you can push off indefinitely. There was a law that was passed. It has certain rules and requirements, and you are breaking that law. They say there's a stringent process and legal standard for postponing the release of a record that requires the president to certify why any single file is being withheld. And Biden, with this blanket statement saying, COVID, so we're going to do it later, does not come close to meeting that threshold.
Yeah, and that's the fascinating part in terms of the threshold, but also the data, the documents that we could learn. I don't know. I mean, the more I've dug into it, the less hope I've actually gotten around these documents. It was kind of like with the UFO report. It was just so obvious that they were going
They're going to find a way.
They're going to find a way. And I love, they always try to do these like executive summaries and things. And then, as I understand it too, because they can still have redactions, they could just fully redact like entire portions of it, like they did in the past with some documents, and then they still are not required to release any of that. But then they won't even do the trouble of that, which is a whole other question of like, well, okay, is there actually anything in here? I would love to know the answer to that question.
So one researcher, Jefferson Morley, primarily, who has filed a bunch of lawsuits to try to get our hands, the public's hands, his hands on some of these files. He says that their refusal to comply, quote, can only be interpreted as evidence of bad faith, malicious intent, and obstruction of Congress. And I think that's really fair. I mean, look, I personally think there's a lot of evidence to indicate that the CIA was at least way more involved than the public knows, but we don't know. I'll just put that out there, that that's my own personal belief. But even if it's not, why are you continuing to hide these documents about your activities across a range of activities, specifically with regards to the Miami office, with what they were doing with regards to Castro, with these exile groups that they were backing and propping up? Like, why are these things still so many years later being kept a secret? And so I think to say, you know, that it's bad faith and it's obstruction of Congress, like that's just effectively stating a fact right now. Another thing I looked up, because I think that this is interesting, is how many Americans like me believe others were involved. The most recent poll I could find found 61% of Americans. So it's basically like 2/3 to 1/3. 2/3 do not buy the official narrative that it was a lone gunman. They think that others were involved. And I went through demographic by demographic. It's also interesting who. So a lot of it's pretty consistent across age. Like every generation is basically like, nah, that's not what happened. There's a fairly significant racial divide. So white Americans are the most likely to believe the official narrative, and Black Americans are the least likely to believe the official narrative. 76% of Black people in the most recent poll do not buy the official narrative. And look, again, it makes sense when you have a group of people who've been like consistently lied to and screwed over by the federal government, that they'd be like, no, this doesn't make any sense. This doesn't add up. There's more going on here that y'all aren't telling us about.
My main suspicion is that it would just reveal all sorts of insane, like Operation Mongoose stuff regarding the Castro regime, right? Is that the CIA Miami station was clearly up to just insane level shenanigans, that if we know what's already come out is that they were willing to stage an attack in order to invade Cuba, what else are they keeping secret in terms of what was actually going on there? And that it would basically just validate all of the mostly correct Cuban conspiracy theories that, you know, we were trying everything in our power at the time in order to kill Castro and destabilize the regime.
To make his beard fall out because we thought that was the source of his power. I mean, just like completely insane stuff.
That's like my main suspicion around why it remains. But look, I mean, who knows? I'd love to learn more.
Yes, I would love to learn more. Also, as I said to you, I really miss having Sean McCarthy on Twitter at a time like this to tell us his thoughts on
He was a great follow. He really was.
He was a great follow. What exactly was going on here? Jack on Twitter, free Sean McCarthy. Anyway, the wait continues indefinitely for these files to ever be released. And that's all we have to say about that.
There we go.
We'll have more for you guys later. Hey guys, thanks so much for watching.
That's right. Just as a reminder, you can become a premium subscriber today. Watch the full show completely uncut, our reactions to each other's monologues. You get to listen to it. You get to ask us questions, all that good stuff. Link is right there in the description or at breakingpoints.com.
Best of all, great way to say screw you to the mainstream media.